Hey everyone, it's Colleen, the Preparedness Pro. We are live right now. So if you've got questions that you want to ask today's awesome guest, feel free to just make a comment in the Facebook or the Instagram comments or on YouTube. I managed to snag Dave Jones back, and we've done over a dozen of these interviews so far, but there was just so much more that I left on the table. I mean, how often do you get someone who's a former OSI investigator, that's Air Force Special Investigations, Office of Special Investigations, I should say, and a former police chief, and someone who does not know the meaning of the word retire. And so in his so-called retirement, he's a fireman as well. We just don't get that very often. Those kind of people are rare, especially with such a tenured period of time of service. He's also an amazing author. Has written a great series that I call the Guardians of Rockport. That's what you call it too, right, Dave?
Yeah.
Guardians of Rockport series. I just gobbled up that series. He's also written other books on what he knows best, which is crime and detective work. He still is a detective advisor for precincts. So there's just so much more we want to pick his brain about. And after speaking with Rob Chadwick the other day from USCCA, I knew I had to have Dave on again to help fill in some of the gaps that we didn't get to take care of with Rob. So, Dave, thank you so much for coming back on the show.
I'm happy to do it.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know you, they're unfortunate. Let's just start off with just a little bit about you, because I think that's important for our audience to get some type of point of reference. As I mentioned, that you were Air Force Special Office of Special Investigations. That's a brainiac job, folks, just so you know. That's somebody who's not going to get, his kids aren't going to get away with much after that job.
No, they
didn't. And then police chief, in a unique environment, not what most police chiefs are today. So law enforcement out the wazoo. And then now you're into firefighting. And then in your spare time, you're writing great books to devour. So can you share your journey from law enforcement through law enforcement and then into firefighting?
Sure. I spent 20 years as a special agent with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, or OSI. I imagine most of your listeners haven't heard of that unless they're near an Air Force base. But if you've seen the TV show NCIS, I think there's 4 of them now. We're the Air Force equivalent to the NCIS. So we have a joint headquarters at Quantico, Virginia. So the NCIS, they do Navy and Marines. The OSI does Air Force and Space Force. And the Army CID does the Army. We're a little different than other federal agencies. We're a federal agent just like the FBI, but our job is a little bit different. We do all investigations and felony level investigations above what the military police can do, and counterintelligence, counterespionage work. So we're kind of like half FBI and half CIA. So most of my career, I was a specialist. I was an anti-terrorism specialist. So I did that. The bulk of my career, I did a lot of felony work too, a lot of bodyguard work, executive protection. But my niche in my career was more anti-terrorism. And my final assignment, I was a superintendent of the Special Investigations Academy, Detachment 1. So any OSI agent or NCIS guy that was going to deploy to Africa or Middle East or Iraq or Afghanistan, they'd come to me and I'd have 6 weeks to teach detectives how to be soldiers before they'd go try to be detectives in a combat zone. That was a great job. I loved it. And I told my wife, you followed me for 20 years, then I'll follow you. And I would have stayed and become a civilian OSI. I was a military agent, but there's also a lot of civilian agents. But the wife wouldn't come back to Wisconsin, where she's from, and that's how we got here. And there wasn't a lot of federal jobs for me in Appleton. So I became a local police officer at first with Grand Chute. Appleton's, the Fox Valley area is about 300,000. So it's a populated area, but not super populated, and a lot of little towns. So I was a city cop first in Grand Chute. Then I went and became a college, the chair of criminal justice program for the university. Then I missed law enforcement. I went back and I became a veteran affairs police officer for a little bit. And then I took the job as chief of police for the University of Wisconsin, which was kind of a unique experience, more different than I thought it would be. And that was great. And I retired from that 3 years ago almost. And I always wanted to be a firefighter. So I became a volunteer firefighter about 4 years ago. So I just got now a fire investigator and I do part-time. It's a volunteer position, but it's a lot of fun.
So you get to do, if people have watched Chicago Fire, you get to do what Kelly Severide does on the show Chicago Fire with the fire investigations, right?
Yeah, it's just like that. No, I do that. Yes. It's volunteer stuff, but it's not as sexy or glamorous as that. It's usually walk around. I mean, any fire is going to be a big bunch of ash. You walk around there with boots on, getting covered in ash, trying to take soil samples, send them to the lab. It's a lot more forensic and a lot less sexy than it is on TV. But it's an important job, and it's fun to
Well,
do in my volunteer capacity.
let's be honest here. What motivated you to go and be the police chief at a university campus?
My youngest daughter, was going to college, and I want to keep my eyes on her. So she went to be a freshman at the University of Wisconsin. I became the police chief there just to keep her in my hip pocket. So it was kind of like a sitcom, but it was fun. And we're buddies. We had a good time, but it was kind of unique having your dad's the chief of police. So
Yeah, that's unique. Don't mess with her, man. Don't you dare put something in her drink.
nope, nope. She's a good kid, and so that's why she has a starring role in like most of my Guardians of Rockport series. She's
Yeah.
Her name's Cassie, but she plays Maddie in the book, and she's a school teacher now. And so most of the characters in my fictional dystopian book are based off my friends and family, which makes it a fun thing to write.
And read too, because you get to
Oh,
see some insight into the author. It's fun that way.
well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I started more as a therapeutic way. I deployed to combat Middle East 8 times, so I have a lot of time in the Middle East, and so I have some PTSD from that. So it started off as a therapy, a therapeutic way to write my things I don't feel comfortable saying out loud, emotions, and it was a therapeutic way. It's very therapeutic for me, but it's a fun hobby. Now it's making a little bit of money, so I
Well,
enjoy
that's
doing it.
wonderful. That's awesome. Well, can you share a particularly memorable or impactful experience from your career in law enforcement?
There's so many. I guess the big one is 9/11. Like that's what most cops are at my age would say. I was on the anti-terrorism team in the Air Force. There are 3 anti-terrorism teams. They call them AST. I served on 2 of them. I served on the big one, then I was team leader of the one in Europe. But at the time, I was on the one in the stateside one, and I was overseas working the USS Cole investigation on the Yemen Oman
Mm,
border. So I worked in that case. I just got back to the States, so I wasn't due to deploy. I was supposed to have a 6 months non-deployment time between deployments. But I just got back, and then 9/11 happened. So of course, there were only a handful of guys, or there were only about 30 agents that were qualified for anti-terrorism work in the Air Force. So I took the first team in. There were 6 of us. We went in through Uzbekistan into Afghanistan. So for me, I was 30 years old at the time. Yeah, 30, which is young. And to
yeah.
go there, and after I always hear about I think about Pearl Harbor. My grandfather's Pearl Harbor, and going overseas. So this is the first time, I didn't want the war. I wouldn't let anybody down. So I took a 6-man team over there, and just a very unique, emotional time. I left my young family, and I didn't know when I was coming back. Normally, when you have orders to the combat zone, you're leaving today, come back next time. But this time we didn't. They just had orders. We're going. Didn't know exactly where we were going or when we'd come back. There's no base. We just went in there and landed and tried to operate. So it was unique. There was about 200 of us at the beginning with special forces, 6 OSI agents, and a few other guys. So if you saw the movie 12 Strong, where they went in on horseback, that was the situation.
Wow.
So it was very unique. It kind of changed my perception on a lot of things.
Well, I want to delve more into the law enforcement side of things because I want to peel back the curtain and help civilians interact better with law enforcement. We had John Lott on here. I don't know if you caught that one, but John Lott
No,
was
he's
saying
a good
how,
catch.
yeah, I'm a lucky girl. What
Man,
can I say?
I feel unworthy based off your clientele you had on.
John Lott was talking about how he believes one of the most valuable self-defense mechanisms, and that's probably the wrong term. I'm sure he'd have something much more clear to say than that. But what is our police force, and how stripping it down, like you talked about in the first interview, what a negative impact that has been. But he talks about how we should interact better with the police force in order to have less crime going on in the U.S. And so, one of the things that I want to accomplish in today's interview is just that. What we discovered in the interview with Rob Chadwick, and if you haven't caught that, folks, I strongly suggest that you go and catch that interview with Rob Chadwick, who's head of the director of training for the USCCA. What are some of the first things that someone should do after a self-defense situation, whether that is with fists or pepper spray or a firearm? what are some of the first things that someone should do after self-defense situation from the perspective of the civilian?
All right. I'll say the first thing is make sure you're safe. If you're fighting a guy and you win, you can get away, get away, get away, make yourself safe. If it's a gunfight and the shots fired, keep the suspect at gunpoint and make sure you don't get holes in you. So make sure you're safe, number one. Two, contact law enforcement, and because you want your side of the story to be put out. So you want to get them coming and let them know that, hey, I'm the good guy. If I have a firearm, I want to identify, hey, I'm 5'10", I'm 200 pounds, these are the clothes I have on. I was involved in a self-defense shooting. Tell the police I'm coming and give them your description, because they're not going to know if you're a good guy or bad guy or not when they get there. But if the responding officers have that, it's something. When the cops come up, it's best not to have a gun in your hand. Now, if you have to, you're holding someone at gunpoint. Maybe when the police get there, hold the gun over your head or do something so you don't have a mistaken identity shooting. The police don't know what's going on, so they're going to basically treat you like a suspect at first to make everybody safe, because they don't know the situation. So they'll probably handcuff you. They'll disarm you. Just cooperate. And you want to say certain things. But one thing you do want to do is you want to point out any witnesses. If it's a legitimate shooting, say, the lady over there saw it. You can get her name. Can you see this camera over there? These people on the bus was going by. So any evidence that will help you, you want to point out to the law enforcement officer, because it won't be a detective. It might be a 21-year-old kid right out of the academy. You might miss things. So you want to point all that out. And then it's going to talk about what is it a good shoot or a bad shoot, or somewhere in the middle, and you don't know. So you want to be careful what you say. You don't want to not cooperate with the police. You definitely want to cooperate with them, but you don't want to make a hard statement. So what I always tell my police officers, which they have more training, but I tell the police officers as well, don't make a hard statement, because as Lieutenant Colonel Grossman will tell you, he'll talk about a thing called tachypsyche. Your brain, to protect you, is going to bifurcate your memories and your perceptions. So you're going to say things that maybe aren't accurate because your mind helped you protect yourself from that. So what I tell the officers to say, or tell civilians, I was scared for my life. That's the first thing we're doing a shooting is, I was scared for my life. I was worried. I want to talk to you, but I'm a little kerfluffled right now. I want to talk to an attorney before I make any hard statements. But you don't want to just hard line tell them nothing, because you want to tell them the facts. Well, this guy attacked me. This guy pulled a gun. I was scared for my life. If there's any evidence, okay, he had a knife. He dropped it in the gutter. So there's some things you want to get out, the basic stories, so they can do the basic investigations. You don't want to just carte blanche tell them nothing. You want to tell them just enough to get the case going. Then before you make a detailed statement, let them know on record. Say, I'm a little nervous. I've never been in a shooting before. I'm a little excited right now. I have a lot of adrenaline. I'd like to talk to an attorney before I make a final statement. But for the gist of it, this guy attacked me. I defended myself. I defended my family. You want to get just enough information out so the police can process the scene and they know you're not the bad guy. I've been on cases where somebody has been trained, never talked to the police, which, if you're a criminal, that's good. If you're a legitimate shooter, you don't want to say too much, but you want to say enough. If I say, pound sand, cop, I'm not telling you anything, well, they might assume you're a bad guy. So you want to give them enough information to help you with your case. Like right now, the Daniel Penny case that's getting tried today, you've probably seen that in the news. That's in New York, the ex-Marine that choked the guy out on the subway. He said enough to the police officers to let the police know his situation, but he didn't go overboard. And why we don't want to say too much without a lawyer present is because we don't remember things. Just like if you're a police officer involved in a shooting, as a police chief, we don't let you make a full statement for 20 or 48 hours. You need to have 2 full sleep cycles before I do a full debriefing of you, because you're going to remember things differently. Just like going back 20, 30 years ago, we had to interview sexual assault victims. And later it turned out their stories were only partially correct, and people accused them of lying. And it wasn't that they were lying, it's that their perception, to protect them, they don't remember certain things. If you're in a high stress situation, time will slow down or speed up. You'll have auditory exclusion. You won't hear certain things. You'll have tunnel vision. Your eyes will close in. You won't realize what's going on around you. So and if you're saying things, you might forget the order it happened. So it was very common for sexual assault victims who just came through a very traumatic event to say things in the wrong order, or wrong spatial order. And that immediately after, then 3 or 4 weeks later, when they're going to court, the attorney might point out that they were lying or they were wrong, or they said things that weren't correct. When in fact, it was correct in their mind, but their mind was protecting them at that point. So now we want you not just to have 48 hours, but 2 full sleep cycles before we go a deep interview of a highly traumatic situation of a police officer involved in a shooting or a sexual assault victim. We'll talk to them initially to find out, okay, where's the evidence? We need to go collect these bed sheets. Is there a used condom, or is there soiled panties? We need to collect this evidence. We need to know that right away, but before we do a hardcore breakdown interview, we give them 2 full sleep cycles to make sure that their faculties are back, their emotions are down. So if you're involved in a police shooting or any sort of situation, tell the officers, this person attacked me. I was scared for my life. That's important to say. If you shot someone, you're scared for your life. You want to say just enough for the officers to do their investigation, to have a concept of what's going on. But say, I'm very nervous right now. I like to have a couple of sleep cycles or talk to an attorney to make sure, and every police officer in the country knows this. It's what we go through as police officers, so it's an expectation the civilian would want to do that as well, if that makes sense.
Wonderful. Yes, that's great. Thank you so much. So, what are some things that if it was your own daughter, what are some things that you would not want her to say to an officer after a self-defense incident?
It's more important to think about what to say than what not to say. You don't want to, basically, I shot the guys. I intended to kill them. I did that. So you never shoot to kill. You shoot to stop the threat. Obviously, they may die at the point of being shot in the chest, but you shoot to stop the threat. You never shoot to kill.
Okay, one more time. You never shoot to kill. You shoot to
stop the threat.
Stop the threat.
Yeah.
Okay.
So police don't shoot to kill. We shoot to stop the threat. Now, the best way to stop a threat is to shoot them in center mass, either the head or the chest. You're stopping the threat, but your intention isn't to kill the person. Your intention is to stop the threat. So it's more important about what to say than what not to say. You don't want to say anything that makes you look like you're the aggressor. You basically want to show, hey, I was scared. I was defending my life, defending my family, defending a person on the street. And I was scared that somebody would be hurt. I was scared that I would be killed. And obviously, the main word that comes out for police officers is reasonableness. What are your actions reasonable? You can use every level of force, but obviously, shooting someone is always going to be a deadly force. That may not be a reasonable amount of force. In most states now, there's things called the Castle Doctrine or the Stand Your Ground Law. Those are important to know if your state has those, and every state's different. It doesn't give you the right to use deadly force all the time, but we'll talk briefly about the Castle Doctrine. That applies to your home or your vehicle or a place you're lawfully allowed to be, like your work. If somebody attacks you and there's a Castle Doctrine in your state, you don't have to leave. You can stay and defend yourself in your home. If there's no Castle Doctrine, that's almost like you must evacuate. So in California, there's no Castle Doctrine. In California, if somebody breaks into your home, if you're able to run out the back door, you have to do that before you use deadly force. You can't use deadly force in California unless there's no option to flee. So you think Castle Doctrine, the opposite would be you must flee if possible doctrine. So does your state have a Castle Doctrine? Then basically the Stand Your Ground Law is the same thing, but could be anywhere. You don't have to retreat. So if someone's attacking you on the street and they pull a knife, if you can run away, you have to run away in a state that doesn't have a Stand Your Ground Law. A Stand Your Ground Law means you don't have to run away. So you can stand your ground. So it's not a cut-all thing, but it allows you. Any state that has that, you have more rights as a citizen to defend yourself in those situations. Now, running away may be the best defense.
Well, one of the things that John Lott talked about is how women are at a disadvantage when they're running away from a male attacker because they can typically outrun the female, which is interesting with these states that do not have stand your ground laws without taking that into account. That was one of the fascinating things that I found in reading his books. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about is the mental and psyche aftermath and being involved in a self-defense situation. What can you tell people about that to help them focus, to help them make benefit of those two nights sleep, etc.?
Okay. Well, first let's talk about the first 30 minutes. When you get in any fight or flight situation, you're going to have an adrenaline dump. Your body does that for your fight or flight response. And I noticed your guest yesterday talked about that. You have your fight response, your flight, or freeze. Most people freeze. Obviously, you want to train fight or flight and not be that person that freezes in the combat zone. That's always a loser. The best thing to do is to do the right thing. Second best thing is to do the wrong thing. The worst thing is to do nothing at all. So you want to act. But after your body, you get the adrenaline dump from your kidneys. It dumps adrenaline into your system, and your body's going to react. So if you've been training at the range, you're going to lose your fine motor skills. So if you're at the range, you're training to hit little buttons on your gun. All that's going to go away because all the blood leaves your fine motor skills, your fingers, your toes, and goes to the big muscle groups. You can run fast and punch hard. So all your fine motor skills go away. So back when I became a cop in the early 90s, we had trained officers to use their thumb to hit their slide release. And we now know in combat, you're not going to be able to do that because you have no fine motor skills. So now we just teach the cop, hit their magazine, pull the slide, use everything, gross motor skills, because your fine motor skills are going to be gone once your adrenaline dumps. So you fight that
Interesting.
way. Yeah, but then after about 10 to 15 minutes, when your body goes into reaction once the fight's over, all that adrenaline's going to go away, and it's different dopamine, different things are going to go into your blood system. You're going to start getting the shakes. It's going to be like you're freezing. I mean, even if you've been in a situation 4 or 5 times, you'll start shaking uncontrollably, and it's because your body's reacting to the rush of adrenaline being gone. So things that are going to happen is you're going to have like Colonel Grossman could talk much more about this. This is his thing, but the tachypsyche, that's his term. He coined that phrase, I believe. But you're going to get your tunnel vision. So I mean, in a situation, your eyes focus just like you're a gazelle and a puma's chasing you in Africa. So I mean, you're going to get blood's going to go to the big muscle groups. Your eyes are going to focus so you can see far away and pinpoint where the threat is coming from. Your auditory exclusion, you're not going to hear things, so you're just going to pinpoint certain things. Time's going to slow down or speed up. So people have a hard time remembering things in the right order because your mind does this. It takes 2 full sleep cycles to get over that. So then PTSD is usually going to be a problem. You're going to have sleepless nights. You probably be sick. You took someone's life and you weren't prepared for that. That's even if you are prepared for it, it's a hard situation. Even if it was a just, complete shooting, you had to do it to save lives. If you took a life, that's hard on the human. It's hard on our psyche, and so everybody reacts to that differently. And PTSD is a real thing that's going to set in. Just like any traumatic situation, there's going to be levels you have to go through of denial and anxiety and fear and hatred, and you have to process all that. And I'll leave that to Grossman. He's the guy for that. But it takes a while to overcome it. But immediately after that, you're going to get the shakes. And it's not that you're a coward; it's just your body's physiological reaction to the adrenaline wearing off. Just like if you've ever been in a bad car accident or almost, and you just turned and just missed the accident briefly, a few minutes later, you start getting the shakes. It just happens. If you've ever been in a fight, after the fight, you get the shakes. It's not because you're a coward; it's your body's physiological reaction to the adrenaline wearing off, and so that's to be expected.
So, how is the psyche of a regular civilian then different from that of a boxer? Because I don't think I see boxers getting the shakes after their fight, so to speak. What have they done mentally to make that a different experience?
One is training. If first time you're in a fight, you get the shakes afterwards. But if you're in fights all the time, it's normalized. But it comes down to training. If you train for situations all the time, your experience will be less, but you can still have it. But anytime you do training, I play the what if game. That's what I guess one of the biggest takeaways for me is whether you're a new police officer or my daughter going to school or any of the students at the university, what if? And that's how you mentally prepare it. So it's not the first time if you get in a situation, it's not the first time you thought about it. You've thought about it 20 other times. So what would you do if you had a flat tire? Okay, I would change it. What do you do if there's a drunk knocking on your door? What do you do if someone comes at you with a knife? If you thought about it several times by playing the what if game, I would do with my daughters. We go to a restaurant. Where are the exits? Okay, if somebody came with a gun, what could you do? Well, there's exits here and here. I could go through the kitchen. I could break a glass door. I could hide under the table. You played the what if game. So if and when it ever does happen, they've thought about it. Same with rookie police officers who are doing field training. Okay, we're taking shots from the left. Your field training officer goes down. What do you do? Okay, I take cover behind this ditch. Radio dispatch. I would, and basically by thinking through it, playing the what if game, it's not the first time they responded to it mentally when it actually happens. And like a boxer, they've trained and trained and trained, so when they do get in a fight, it's more a routine expectation versus a first experience with that.
So, what are some of your suggestions then to stay um, calm as possible in the midst of a crisis or just in the immediate aftermath?
Okay, it's going to be breathing. Breathing focuses on everything. So we call it Navy SEAL breathing, but it's basically slow breath in, long breath out your mouth, in your nose and out your mouth. Do that several times, and that does a few things. One, it makes your tachypsyche go away. It makes your auditory exclusion and your tunnel vision go away because you're getting more oxygenated blood to your brain. Also, after a police shooting, what we do is we always have the officers look to the right, look to the left, look up. What you're doing, several things. I'm looking around for other threats before I holster my weapon. Looking to the right. Is there any more threats to the right? Any threats to the left? And I look up. So I'm looking for threats because everybody forgets to look up, but there might be a person on a balcony upstairs or something. So you look up. You're looking for other people that might be shot. Maybe my partner took a bullet. I didn't hear it because I have auditory exclusion. So I'm looking to the left, looking to the right, looking up. I'm breathing in and out. I do all that, and that should let my vision open back up, calm me down a little bit, keep my nerves so I can talk on the radio, call for backup without, sounding, bejazzled. So I do all that. I do all that before I holster my weapon. And that's pretty common for police officers. That's how we train police officers, and it's a way to train civilians as well. The breathing and looking and getting situational awareness of your new battlefield. What just happened? If he shot rounds, you shot rounds. Most of your rounds are going to miss. Most of his rounds are going to miss, but you're going to hit something somewhere. Did a kid behind me get hit? Did my wife get hit? Did I hit somebody I didn't intend to shoot? So you're scanning for threats, scanning for wounded, scanning for witnesses that might, come to your aid later. And you're breathing in and out and calming your nerves and getting more oxygenated blood to your brain.
So would you say this kind of changes my perspective and my approach in training women for firearm self-defense? Would you say that training them automatically after a shoot, before they holster their weapon or before they put the weapon away, to have that type of response?
I do a lot of civilian training, mostly in ladies, because the last 4 or 5 years, ladies are by far the fastest growing aspect of gun owners in TCW. So I teach civilian firearms ownership, and I'd say ladies are probably 90% of my students. And I train that always before you holster after the shooting. I teach them what I teach police officers. Police officers don't have any special ninja training. I teach my civilians what a police officer would need. And the same thing. I teach them, just like I told you, what to say, what not to say, how to decompress. First thing, get yourself safe. If there's a shooting, you don't know if something's going to happen. It might be a second bad guy. So get yourself to cover if you're not already behind cover. Reload if you have to. Start calling the police. Do your breathing. Look for witnesses. You do all this because the battle for a civilian is not over. And you might have just won the confrontation, but like your guest said yesterday, there's going to be a lawsuit. There's going to be a criminal investigation. Just the start of your problems are just starting. I mean, you survived the encounter, but now you need to survive the bureaucracy of the American legal system.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some identifying dangerous individuals here. What are some signs that someone might pose a danger to others? What are some things that you would look for?
I usually look for mannerisms. If their eyes aren't, you can tell out, they say the eyes are the mirror to the soul, but your hands are what will kill you. So if you're trying to hide something, always watch the hands and the eyes are the two things I watch. If they're going to run away as a cop, if a bad guy's going to run away, he always looks to the direction he's going to run first. So if he's looking past me, I know he's going to boogie and try to take off on me. And I'm an older fat guy, so I want to catch him before he runs. So if he starts looking in a certain direction, I know he's looking for an escape route. If he starts lying, their eyes will blink a lot. We used to say you look up and to the left if you're lying, but that's not 100% anymore. It happens a lot, but it's not an always thing. If you're left-handed, you look up and to the right. So it's an indication, but it's not a tell-all thing. A lot of times you'll blink or you'll look up to try to engage certain memory parts of your brain to think of a lie. But it's hard to tell. If they're looking at your purse, looking at your phone, or they're looking around for witnesses, that's a big thing too. If somebody's walking to me on the street and they look back and forth, that's not a normal thing to do. I encourage people to just watch people. Sit in the mall or sit in the park, and as people go by, you'll see how people are walking normally. Usually they're oblivious to their surroundings. Somebody's walking around and looking at certain things. Either they're a cop or usually a predator. So it's you can see how bad guys look and think because they act differently than other people. They're looking for a target, looking for an escape route, looking for potential witnesses, looking for cameras. So watch their eyes. And then if they have a gun or weapon, they're going to use their hands. Usually they're going to be in their waistband. Most bad guys are going to carry a gun. We call it prison carry, basically in the front of the pants and the waistband. So if you see the left hand pull up a shirt, the right hand will draw a weapon if they're right-handed. So it usually takes two hands to do that. So if you watch, you look for bulges. That's where most people will carry a gun that are criminals because you have a holster because if they use it, they want to be able to ditch the gun easy. If I catch a guy, he has an empty holster, he's my suspect because where's your gun at? So most bad guys don't carry a holster because it's hard to throw the gun away if you still have a holster on your hip. So they'll just kind of prison carry in their waistband. So watch their eyes and how are they dressed. I don't want to demonize people that wear hoodies, but a lot of bad guys wear hoodies because it's easy to hide your identity, your head. Again, I don't want to say anyone that wears a hoodies is a criminal, but if you see a lot of people and one person's trying to hide their face, hide their what they're wearing, it might be a clue. And then you can just kind of walk to the other side of the street. If they follow you, it's a clue. If I'm walking down the street and I see someone questionable coming toward me, a big thing is your spidey sense. Your gut will tell you that maybe something's not right. So cross over to the other side of the street. If they cross over with you, that's a sign. So you might want to turn and go the other way. You might want to confront them. You might want to do something different to defend yourself. But your situational awareness is everything. You want to identify a threat. If you can identify a threat, you can avoid it. So if you're walking obliviously looking at your cell phone, you walk right into someone's trap, then it's a little too late. If you have to use your weapon, you've already lost.
Yeah, that's something that Rob Chadwick said yesterday too. Is in all the time that he was with SWAT and FBI, he said if you have to pull your weapon, you've already failed the mission.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Avoidance is the best.
yes. No matter how competent you are with a firearm, it's still avoidance is the key. So let's talk about, especially given your time as a police chief for a university, how can people prepare for emergencies in a dorm, small apartment environment? And then maybe let's address on the road.
Okay. In a dorm, just like anyone else, I say play the what if game. And it's going to be not everything's a shooting situation, but if you hear someone knock on your door and you go to look out the peephole and there's a thumb over the peephole, don't answer it. If you hear a fight next door, realize, if there's a gunfight next door, the bullets will go right through drywall like no problem. So have a way to secure yourself in your dorm room or your apartment. How are you going to secure it? Usually dorms don't have windows, so you can put a chair behind the door, some sort of device to block your door. But if you're in a small house, you have to worry about the windows as well. Houses are not designed to keep bad guys out. So, but you can keep the honest person out. But if somebody wants to get in your house, you're going to do that. So have a level of defense. I can block my door. I can close my curtains. Understand lighting. I can turn the lights off inside the house. Turn the lights on outside the house. So it's hard for them to see in, easy for me to see out. But then find a way to have a plan to defend yourself. If you do have a gun, like we have a plan. I'll tell my wife. We drill every so often. Something happens and I'm not home. She gets the dogs, gets the kids, goes to the back bedroom, gets the gun out first before she calls the police, because the police will arrive in 5 to 10, 15 minutes. The bad guy might be in a minute, in 30 seconds. So when seconds count, the police are minutes away. So get the kids, get the important things, get the firearm, take a spot in a certain room where we have planned behind a piece of furniture, and call the police. Say, my name's Patty Jones. I'm a police officer's wife. I live at this address. There's someone at my door. I'm in the back bedroom. I have a gun. So if you say I have a gun, the police are coming faster. And to tell the police officers that I'm in the back bedroom, I have a firearm, and so they're coming quickly. And then usually the dispatcher will stay on the phone with you if you're in a bigger location or there's multiple dispatchers. And then when the cops get there, they'll tell you when the cops are outside the house. And then you can communicate. You don't have to trust the voice. The dispatcher on the phone will tell you that. But have a plan. Always have a plan where to go and what are you going to do. If you have kids in like 4 or 5 bedrooms, is there a safe area where you can rally all the kids in one group? Because now I have 2 kids in one room and a bad guy's in my doorway. If I shoot the bad guy and I miss and it goes through a wall, is the nursery on the other side of the wall? Am I in a dorm, or is it going to go somewhere else? So think about what are your targets. What I always tell people to do now, most colleges you can't have guns in the dorms, but I tell people if you're shooting inside a house where you have neighbors in close proximity, usually drop to a knee and aim up, because then your bullet's going to go on an upward trajectory. So if there's a guy at my front door and he's 10 feet away, if I shoot straight at him and it penetrates him and keeps going, my bullet's going to go straight to the neighbor's house. If I drop to a knee and I'm shooting at a 30-degree angle, I'm going to hit the guy, but then the bullet will keep going up and it'll be less chance of hitting something dangerous. We learned that from we do a lot of, I used to teach air marshals. So on planes, the place you don't want to shoot on plane is above it. You always see on TV where they shoot the window and everybody gets sucked out. That doesn't really happen. What you don't want to shoot on a plane is above it. That's where all the hydraulics are above it. You want to shoot down in the luggage compartment or some other way. So you want to find out where your bullet's going. Back in the day before they had armored cockpits, if I'm an air marshal, I'm taking out a suspect, I don't want to shoot toward the cockpit because I don't want to hit the pilots. Well, now the pilot's cockpit is armored and we can do certain things, but we don't want to shoot upwards because that's where the hydraulics are. So there we try to make close contact and make a body shot, transverse through the body if we have to. But obviously as a civilian, you don't want to have to do that, but just try to shoot somewhere where the things important aren't going to be. So normally if you take a knee and shoot upwards, when I taught a lot of the active shooters for school response, a lot of times we'll teach drop to a knee, because normally you want to have target identification, find the bad guy, target acquisition, I pin them, and target isolation when there's no one around it before we take a shot. But in the school shooting situation where kids are running around left and right, we might hit a child. But if we don't take the shot, it's called the greater danger theory. If we don't take the shot because the target isn't clear, he's going to continue to kill other people. So we have to take that shot. So I usually tell my officers to drop to a knee and shoot, because your bullet will be going an angle upwards. So if you hit the guy, the bullet will penetrate, keep going higher and higher. And hopefully when it comes down, it's in a safe location or has less energy. If that makes sense. But the what if game is really what to play.
Wow, you've just unloaded a whole lot of information there. I'm going to
Sorry
have
about
to
that. Yeah.
listen to this over and over again here.
I'll limit it to the questions asked.
No, I love it. That's what I've got you on here for. So, in terms of personal safety, you've talked about situational awareness as being a key component, and the what if game that you've always played with your family too, and make them accountable when they go out in public, to make them aware of exits and such. Are there any other specific habits or practices that you would suggest that promote self-reliance and self-defense?
Uh, just get into the habit and play the what if game. If you're out, I saw you talking yesterday about somebody was pumping gas and they got carjacked and they sprayed gasoline on somebody. That's a great defense mechanism. But play the what if game. Just think about when you're pumping gas. What can you do? Like with my daughter, when she was going to school, she couldn't carry a gun on the school a lot of times. But I had we're in Wisconsin, so she had an ice scraper, and it's like a weapon. She had another one that's, she hooked to her sun visor. She's pumping gas, and someone comes up. First thing you do is get in your car and lock the doors if you had to. But if not, she had improvised weapons you could use, like an ice scraper, certain things that aren't maybe guns, but they can be easily utilized. And if you already think about it, okay, this ice scraper is my weapon. I have this here, I have pepper spray. You already have a concept, you know what you're going to do. If you just kind of panic and freeze, trying to think about what you're going to do, you've already failed. You already have to have a plan. So you're pumping gas, or you're walking, and you're hiking somewhere. If something happens, have a plan. What am I going to do? How am I going to defend myself? How am I going to call for help? How am I going to signal people?
Yeah, that whole have a plan. That's part of the first and second principles we teach of spiritual
Yeah,
preparedness and mental preparedness.
and they're excellent
Um,
principles, yeah.
what do you think the role of spiritual preparedness plays in the aftermath of a self-defense scenario?
Well, I'm a Christian, so that's a big part of who I am and how I process things, but not everybody is. But having a higher power is going to help you psychologically overcome a lot of things. Why did I have to take a life? Did I do this? What am I going to go through? If you have something to you get to pray to, or you have a higher power you could look in or find comfort in, that's always helpful. Whether it be, Christianity or Islam or Buddhism or anything, if you have some sort of higher power that you look to, it's going to make something that's greater than yourself. It's going to help you overcome challenges, just from a psychological aspect.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Would you mind sharing a personal story where perhaps some quick thinking and preparation made a difference in an emergency?
Hmm. Yeah, there's many. I'll go back to civilian times. I was a brand new cop or a brand new OSI agent. This is in the 90s, and I was driving with my wife and a 3-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old daughter in a car. I was driving to a new base from Montana to north to Texas. So we're outside of San Angelo, Texas, and it was midnight. I've been driving all day, and 2 young kids in the back seat, and I've been driving for like 12, 13 hours, just exhausted. I stopped at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. It was my mistake. I had bad situation. I wasn't watching what I was doing. I got gas and went parked on the side of the gas station where it was dark and there wasn't anybody around. And I got out, my wife and 2 kids were in the car. Then the car pulled up behind me and 4 guys got out of it. Well, automatically I knew this is a bad situation because you don't just park there. 4 guys got out of the car. They're parked blocking me in, and 2 came on each side of the car. Luckily, I was armed, carrying off duty. So I pulled my shirt back and showed them my gun and my badge and said, "Hey, can I help you guys?" And they just called my gun and badge. I all kind of got in the car and left. But my wife, before that, my first year in law enforcement, she's always like, "Why do you carry your gun off duty? It's such a pain in the butt. You always have to have a cover garment. It's always a pain in the butt." After that, she never once complained about me carrying off duty again because bad things would have happened. Whether we just got robbed, but I couldn't fight 4 guys, especially with my children and my wife there. I'm exhausted. I picked a bad location. I parked in the dark on a unpopulated area. It was my bad. So now I always watch where I park. I check before I get out of my car. I always carry my firearm, and my wife doesn't complain about it anymore since that time.
Wow. Okay, so let me ask you this. We've got the benefit of all of your history, of all of your experience. What basic first responder skills should every prepper learn, such as, is it first aid or fire suppression or self-defense? What are some basics that they really need to take time to learn?
I would say all that is great things, but one, we got to think about the government. They can't always be there to help you. We have an ambulance crew, but you still have a first aid kit. We have a police department, but you still should be able to take care of yourself. There's a fire department, but you still have a fire extinguisher and smoke alarms. Your job is to take care of your family until help arrives. Help's coming if it can, but if it's a major disaster, help might not be coming. 911 might be down. If it's a Katrina situation, help might be days away. As a parent, it's your job to take care of your family until help arrives. So you want to have, learn basically basic fire. How do I put out a fire? How do I use a fire extinguisher? It's simple. There's so many things to do. But how do I put out a simple fire? How do I evacuate? What are the exit ramps for my house? Can I do CPR? can I stop the bleed? If there's a gunshot, if you have a firearm in your house and you do some training, I believe you should have a minimum of how to stop the bleed training. Whether put a tourniquet on or direct pressure, you should learn about that. I'm a big advocate of Second Amendment. Everybody should be right to have a gun, but then again, there's responsibility to having a gun. I'm a big Second Amendment advocate, but I'm also a big training advocate. Just because I buy a gun doesn't mean I'm trained. I know how to use it. I could buy a guitar. It doesn't make me a musician. I have to learn how to play it and train and take classes and practice. Same with the firearm. Just buying it doesn't mean I'm armed. It just means I have a potential deadly item in my house that could be used anyway. It's just an object. So learn your firearm. Learn how and practice with it. Learn CPR. Learn how to stop the bleed. Learn how to put out a fire. Learn basic directions. Now, talk to my wife. Of course, after 30 years, I'm still trying to teach her north, south, east, or west. She doesn't get that. It's going to be like, are we going
now she's not here to defend herself.
I know, but we got this. My daughters too. So learn basic directions where it's going to be. I live. This is my address, and you don't have to know like a cop. I'm eastbound or westbound, but you know generally where you're at. I drive with my daughter, my wife. Okay, if we got in a car accident right here, you call the police. What would you tell them? What road are we on? What highway are we on? If you don't know, you can look at the side of the road, learn mile markers. There's a mile marker 113 on the side. Or you can tell the dispatcher, okay, I see I'm on the highway. I'm going from Appleton to Green Bay. I see a Best Buy store to my left. But that's playing the what if game. If there's a car accident, you got to report right now, and you're going to get to help somebody. What would you tell dispatch? So many people are following their GPS. They don't know where they're at because their phone's telling them where to go. When they call 911, they can't look at their phone because they're on the phone with it. So just play that what if game. You don't have to be like a cop and know I'm on like the 2400 block of J Street, but be able to, if something happened, okay, I'm on Highway 43, I'm on Highway 41. You know roughly what you're going. If you don't know you're going north or south, your car usually has a compass on your car. It says S or N. Where is that? And start using that. And just so you have a somewhat of an understanding of where you're at, because you're calling for help and you don't know where you're at, it's going to be harder to find you. Especially if you're a hiker or a jogger, you're out in the woods on a hiking trail. If you call the 911 when it pings usually 1,000 feet around where you're at, which is a big area. A lot of times we get a call or nowadays someone gives your kid a phone to play doodle jump, and the kid hits 911, hits an emergency call, and the mom doesn't know it. So it sends out a 911 call. Dispatch calls back on the phone, but the phone's on silent while the kid's playing with it. They call back, they don't get a response. They have to dispatch an officer. That officer knows, okay, it's within 1,000 yards. It might be, if you go to the mall, it might be like anywhere in the JCPenney parking lot. Okay, you drive around looking for, a sign, but if you don't know, you don't know. So it's hard because if someone's just pinging up, you tell the cop just to ping off your phone, it's not a very exact science and it takes time. So if you have a little bit of, like, say, I'm by the mall, I'm between the mall and PetSmart. If you don't know your north and south directional, that's fine, but try to work about knowing where you're at. If you have to give a direction to somebody on the spot, could you do it? And so that's one of the biggest problems as a police officer I've seen is communication. Someone calls for help, but they don't know where they're at. Then dispatch is trying to ping their phone, but it might be a jurisdictional issue, and that slows down a response. We're coming, but if you don't know, tell us where to get to you, it's going to make it a challenge, and it's going to slow down a response quite a bit.
You're so meticulous in your books and how you describe things and the proper processes and such. I'm going to put you on the spot here. What are some things that other, we'll say, preppers do that drive you bonkers?
Well, I'm a gun guy. I'll say it right now. I like guns. I have my guns and stuff. I'm a firearms instructor. But so many preppers that I know, they have like 20 guns and 1 million rounds of ammo, but they don't have a fire extinguisher. They don't have any, money saved, any cash for an emergency. They don't have any food. That's, they just have guns and ammo. And usually they're, my age. They're heavy set, 55-year-old guy. And okay, you're probably not going to win a lot of gunfights. You're not going to. We all have this fantasy. It's going to be like Red Dawn, where we're fighting an insurmountable band of zombies or the Russians. And it's fun to fantasize that, but realistically, that's probably not how it's going to be. You might have to fight. If you survive one gunfight, you're doing pretty good. If you survive 3, it's probably not going to happen. But so many people just get all the sexy things of guns and ammo. They rely on stuff and not off knowledge. I'll take knowledge over stuff every day of the week. A big thing I have as a prepper is my survival library. I have a great cookbook. I have different things that, but yeah, you don't know because the internet goes down. How long do you boil your water? How many drops of iodine or bleach do you put in your water to purify it? What do you do? How do you skin a deer if you don't know any of this stuff? What do you do if you have to say you're someone's having appendicitis? Can you do that? So I try to have medical supplies and a book of knowledge. Anything that I can do to print out or save on a thumb drive or something that I can use. Because I have my generator, I can still access my thumb drive unless there's an EMP or something that wipes out computers. But I try to have hard copies of everything. So I have a pretty good survival library of things that I don't know how to do. If I can go back and look it up, I'll have that. But other than that, so many people rely on what they like doing. If you're a radio guy, so many guys have 20 radios, but nothing else. So many guys have 20 guns. So instead of just prepping what you like to do, be well-rounded. How am I going to feed my family? How am I going to protect my family? Look at the 10 processes you have. Can I do all of them? That's what's important.
Yeah. Well, I think you've already answered my final question that I usually ask our guests in terms of parting wisdom. Everything that's come out of your mouth today has been parting wisdom. So I really appreciate you taking the time and helping us to develop better relationships with law enforcement, to better protect ourselves, and to be better prepared. Thank you so much. Let's tell everyone where they can find your books.
All right. My books are all on Amazon.com, or you can go to my webpage. It's going to be davideldonjones.com, DavidEldonJones.com. You can see a little bit about me and my books, and there's links to the Amazon where you can purchase them.
Wonderful. Dave, thank you so much for giving us another shot at you. And once again, we're benefited from it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, folks, let's get you some of these books in your hands because they're wonderful. They help you play the what if game really, really well. It's not an EMP scenario so much that triggers the society collapse as it is. Well, can we tell them what it is?
Sure. It's a cyber attack. It's our own reliance on technology that kind of is our downfall. After hyperinflation hit with the cyber attack, the wheels come off the bus, and we have to decide if all the brick and mortar stores close because we rely on Amazon. If Amazon doesn't work, if we can't order things, there's no fuel to get the goods to your house. What do we do as a society? And
right.
It's sort of a reset.
Right. Well, thanks again so much. And folks, get out and get his books because they're well worth it. I just gobbled them up, stayed up as I tease him. I stayed up way past my bedtime on more than one occasion, and you'll enjoy them. They're great. They're not raunchy. They're realistic, and he's meticulous in the details of the books as well. Thank you so much, Dave. We appreciate you.
Thank you.